Welcome back. Today I'm going to attempt to answer a question that really baffles a lot of people. If you believe in a higher power, if you believe in a God, why suffering? Why? And it's a really tough riddle to unravel. So don't think that you're just gonna, oh, I get it. Maybe you will, but it's because of the work that you have done philosophically, the mental work, the yogic work that you have done before that allows you to come to the conclusion that you came to. And if you haven't done that work, it's not going to be answerable for you today. It's a riddle, and you have to unravel it over time. You have to do some work. So we're going to get into that. What is that work? What is that Raja Yoga work that needs to take place that will enable us to come just a little bit closer? Maybe we won't fully embrace the understanding that I'm going to talk about, but at least we'll get closer to it. The universe will start to hint to us of this understanding, and you will feel it, and you will see it, and maybe it will be far away, but at least you'll see it. And then you'll get closer and closer and closer, and then you will know. But that knowing, it's not something that you figured out in your head. That's not it. It's not going to be an answer for the left brain. So don't think that you're going to get your answer today from the left brain. It's a work that takes place over a long stretch of time. So what is that work? Let's get into it. First of all, let me read you the comment that prompted this video. So this was on my last video, and he says, I commented on your last video, but I would like to hear why you think we go through trauma. Why trauma? Why suffering? Why is our innocence taken away only for us to have to fight to get it back? It's hard not to think God is sadistic. And I answered, I said, have you ever taken a child to a movie and wondered if it would be appropriate for the child? How much conflict is in the movie? But even a children's movie needs conflict. Otherwise, there's no story. No story means there's no chance to learn. And we need just a little bit of conflict, at least, in order to get the learning. In order to learn about good and bad, we have to see the bad. We have to experience it. So that's my simple answer. And of course, it was not enough. This person said, learning for what purpose? What is the greater purpose to life? How convenient that we don't know. No one was ever made unconscious, kidnapped, and taken somewhere where they had no idea where they were or how they got there, and then thought, this must be for my highest good. Never has a story like that turned out good. And then he said, why can no one give me an answer to this? And really they have. They've already given you an answer. The scriptures, the yogis, the sages, the philosophers have already given you an answer, but it wasn't one that you could hear. Why is that? Because you're looking for it in the left brain, and it's something you have to come to intuitively, and that is a yogic process. There's a gorgeous quote, and I believe, for me, it is the most important thing that Einstein ever said. He said, no problem can be solved on the level at which it was created. So think about that. You're looking around at the world and you say, this place is messed up. And you want to fix it. And you should do the things which are right in front of you. Your own life, your own problems, your own family. That's always the place to start. Don't go out trying to fix other people's problems, right? Isn't that a little bit conceited that we think we're going to solve everybody else's problems before we've worked on some of our own problems, right? We ought to start at home. That sounds kind of good, right? Otherwise we become what they call a street angel and a house devil, right? Shouldn't we start with ourselves and our own family? Absolutely. That's the place to start. So we can look around our life and we can say, oh my God, this place is totally messed up. Yes, it is. And Einstein is telling us that the problems that you are seeing, they cannot be solved on the level at which they were created. So if you're trying to fix them on the level at which they were created, you cannot solve them. It is unsolvable in that place. You have to chunk up or chunk down. And in the forming of neurolinguistic programming, they studied two primary approaches of therapy. And one therapist would chunk down. The wife and the husband would come to the therapist, and the wife would say, he's leaving his towel on the floor every time he's doing this thing, whatever it was, he's doing this all the time, every time. And she would chunk down and say, when is he doing it specifically? And they would get more specific and more specific and more specific to the problem. And then when it was very, very specific, she would go to the other one and she would say, can you do this differently right here? And he would go, yeah, sure, I can do that one little thing, absolutely. And they'd go home and the problem would be solved because they chunked down into something that wasn't so nebulous. He's doing it all the time. They chunked down to something very specific, which was practical and doable. And then at the other side of therapy, they would chunk up. They would chunk up into something grander. Here is the problem. What is the problem really about? Well, the problem is really about, I need respect. I need to know that I am cared for and respected. I need to know that I am loved. I need to know that I am cherished and valued. Those are the things that I need to know, and that's why we have this problem, because I'm not getting that feedback. Okay, what is that all about? Well, it's really about knowing that I am loved and cherished. Right? So now we're chunking up. We're chunking up into what is the grander problem? What is the macro view? So first we went into the micro. That's the first side of therapy. And the other side was the macro. And so you come to the other person. Do you love them? Oh, yes. Do you cherish them? Oh, yes. Can you let them know? Yes, I can do that. And so that kind of therapy, chunking down into the micro or chunking up into the macro, it's really powerful. It's really powerful. What are we learning to do mentally? In our experience of Raja Yoga, the mental yoga, what are we learning to do? We're learning to come down to the small, 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 and we're learning to go up into the big, big, big. So we're learning to really focus with clarity, without superlatives, and we're learning to expand into expansion. It's a really powerful mental process. And the places in our life that we are stuck, where we feel stuck in our lives, wherever it is, maybe we feel stuck in our job. Maybe we feel stuck in our finances. Maybe we feel stuck in our relationships. Maybe we feel stuck in our worldview. It's because we are not chunking up into the macro. We're not coming down into the micro specifics. And if we will do that, the problem will begin to unravel. We might not unravel it fully, but it will begin to unravel for us if we can learn to think around the problem. Here's the problem. I was trying to face the problem, but no problem can be solved on the level at which it was created. I have to think around it in the macro or the micro. I have to go down or I have to go up. I have to learn to think around the problem. And when you do this in your life, oh my God, I'm stuck. Okay, what's the macro? Okay, what's the micro? If you can do this and chunk up and chunk down, your brain, your spirit will become so flexible. You will become the most flexible person in the room. And NLP says the most flexible person in the room will win. And usually that's the child. Why is the child the most flexible? Because the child will go into the grocery store, say, I want that. It doesn't get what it wants, and it lays down on the floor and starts kicking and screaming. That's the most flexible person in the room. So you give the kid what they want just to make them quiet, right? That's not a good idea. It's better that you lay down with them and kick and scream, because now they're not the most flexible person in the room, are they? And the child will get up and look at you like you've lost your mind, and they'll never do it again. It's amazing NLP cure, which follows the principle of matching and mirroring the person that you are with. One of the quotes of Yogananda, which comes up to me all the time, it's one of my most favorite quotes from Yogananda. He said, "Why look into the gutters of life when there's beauty all around you?" How often have you walked down the street just troubled and troubled and troubled, and you forgot that the sky was above you? St. Francis used to say, "The weather is always nice, but in different ways." That's beautiful. Have you ever met somebody that it's a rainy day and suddenly they're sad? St. Francis wasn't. He looked up at the clouds. He said, "Oh my God, God is crying in order to water sister flowers." Isn't that beautiful? Shakespeare said, "What a piece of work is a man, how noble in reason, how infinite in faculty," if we will chunk up and down, right? If we will go into the macro and the micro. "In form and moving, how express and admirable. In action, how like an angel. In apprehension, how like a god." Isn't that beautiful? What is he saying? He's saying that life, if you will see it as such, is beautiful. But it won't be beautiful on the level at which you created the problem. You must chunk down. If you chunk down in your life, you might see the baby. And this specific baby that I am looking at is gorgeous. This family that I specifically love, I love them to no end. Or you might chunk up into the macro, and you say, when I stand way, way up above the clutter of life, when I stand way up there and look down, suddenly it is beautiful. But you had to think around the problem. When you're in it, when you're staring at the gutter, it's not pretty. It never will be pretty. Because you're meeting the problem head on. You have to chunk down or you have to chunk up. Finally, what is this deep understanding I'm talking about? This intuitive understanding when you keep chunking up in your life, when you keep chunking up in your meditations and you reach out and you start to touch the macro view, the divine view, and in your meditations you go that deep. You start to touch on that. What happens to you as a yogi? What happens to your view of life? Let's listen to Hafiz. "Spare the world your ideas of right until you know that all is holy." Oh my God, it gives me chills. Spare the world your ideas of right until you know that all is holy. That's us. We sit and we stare at the gutter. Look, it's a gutter. It's horrible. How can you say life is beautiful? How can you say life is admirable? How can you say with all this mess and this suffering and this trauma, right? How can you say it? And Hafiz says, spare me. Spare me your thoughts on the problem in front of you until you have reached up and touched the macro. Then you will know that all is holy. And only from that place does it all make sense. That's the only place. You can't do it when you face the problem head on. You cannot. It will not work. So the left brain answer that I gave, it was not good enough. Any answer that you find, it won't be good enough. You have to do the work. You have to do the Raja Yoga mental philosophy or go very, very deep in meditation. You can go two directions. You can go down into the micro or you can go up into the macro. But you cannot stay and think the answer will come there. No problem can be solved on the level at which it was created. We have to go into the macro, and that is the meditative process in a nutshell. That is it. The whole meditative process is to go up into expansion, all the sitting very still, all the 4 proofs, all the parasympathetic, all the HRV resonant breathing, all the freeze response, that is to prepare you to enter into the deep brain where you expand. And you touch the macro, and the intuitive perception that all is as it should be begins to touch you. You didn't figure it out in your left brain. You perceived it intuitively. That's the meditation process, and it involves work. It's not something you can figure out. It's something you must approach, and then it will come to you. And then you will understand why Hafiz is on this side, looking back. And then you will understand why Plato is in the light, looking back into the cave, saying, guys, there's light out here. You don't have to stay in the dark. But they all stay in the dark, and they tell him he's crazy. You don't know what you're talking about. Obviously, life is dark. Plato says, no, there's light. But as you come towards the light, it will hurt your eyes. There's a moment where you're not sure, and you have to embrace that unknown and keep walking into the light. Why would you do that? Because a whisper is there from your intuition. This is the correct direction. That's the meditative process. So I hope that you love this. If you did, be sure to hit that bell down below so I can see all of you next time.